The narrative of Singapore's Indian community is complex and largely rests in its collective memory. Heritage in the context of this multifaceted community is a complex mixture of tangible and intangible elements of culture, history, and collective memory. Heritage is also a cultural asset. It is a physical space embodying traditional architecture. It is a physical object, an archival photograph, or a document representing cultural practice, a moment or place in time, an event or a journey captured. Intangible heritage is marked by the celebration of a festival or the observance of a rite. It is evident in nostalgia and the narration of collective memory driven by shared experience. An expression of the community's inherent cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity, heritage at times represents cultural adaptation and hybridity. In this gallery, a collection of rare artifacts and textiles illustrate the diverse root cultures of Singapore's Indian communities. These include architectural elements introducing the spaces migrants left behind, as well as paraphernalia, costumes, and illustrations of life cycle rituals, fashion, religion, and festivals migrants brought with them. Lastly, this gallery presents elements of the journey from India to Singapore, such as travel documents and photographs belonging to migrants. I am going to share 5 interesting artifacts with you, giving you glimpses of Singapore's diverse Indian heritage. The Nagarattar Chettiars are among early Indian migrants to the Southeast Asian region, with business establishments in places like Vietnam, Myanmar, Malaysia, and Singapore. Their presence in Singapore can be traced to the early 19th century. A unique feature of the Chettinad region is the extraordinary architecture, design, and layout of the domestic buildings. These are traditional vernacular domestic architectural forms with Tamil and European decorative and structural features. Such elaborate mansions were often the result of wealth accumulated during the diasporic experience in the community. The most magnificent of the domestic architectural installations is the front and central doorway frame, door jambs, and double doors. The wooden double doors are set in an elaborate wooden frame, awe-inspiring in detail and size. The houses were also designed with Burmese teak pillars imported as a result of the diasporic connection, which were then carved by local craftsmen. This is a rare example of a Chettinad doorway which is in excellent condition. The iconography, rendering style, and artistic expression of the Chettinad doorway are testimony to the influence of Nayaka religious art and architecture on the Chettinad region and its artisans. For instance, a well-known Nayaka motif is the rider on a springing horse intertwined with carvings of flora and fauna, including the mythical creature, the Yali. The carvings on the door frame are in close resemblance to mural paintings of the Nayaka palaces. Such doorways are usually embellished with religious iconography, marking the transition from the outside to the sacred interior of the home. This doorway bears an impressive approximate total of 5,000 carved figures. Gajalakshmi, or the Hindu goddess of wealth flanked by elephants, occupies a central position in the carved door frame, in keeping with popular tradition. Interestingly, the iconography is overtly Vaishnavite, with the inclusion of figures like Vishnu on Garuda as well as Rama and his brothers. The Chettiars, however, are largely a Saivite community. During a visit to Yangon in Myanmar, I found that similar but less elaborate doorways had been installed at Mughal Road at the entrance to a former Kitangi, or the place of work of Chettiar private financiers and money lenders. You would also be interested to know that this doorway is made up of many parts that took several hundred hours for our conservators to clean and restore for safe display. There is a dearth in the imagery of early Indian migrants to Singapore. Most photographs date to the late 19th century from studios such as Sackler & Co. and Thomas Brough, who shot some of the earliest portraits of Indians in Singapore between the 1860s and 70s. Later, the firm of G.R. Lambert & Co., which operated from 1877 until the end of the First World War, produced one of the most important pictorial records of Indians in Singapore. However, one could also turn to paintings created under the banner of the company school in the Indian subcontinent, as they serve as a record of modes of hairstyle, drapes and jewelry for women, of headgear and attire for men, both aligned to caste and occupational profiles. Such a likeness was also captured in the form of wood, terracotta and clay figures produced in southern, central and eastern India. The Krishnagad modelling industry was born out of the need to make idols for worship. With time, life-size and miniature depictions of mythological scenes, daily life and celebrities were introduced. By the mid-19th century, artisans were producing works for display at the various great exhibitions being held in Europe. These included life-size figures and illustrations of the indigo factories of Bengal, for instance. Jadunath Pal, his brother Ramlal Pal, his nephew Bakeshwar Pal and relative Rakaldas Pal were the last 4 Krishnagad artisans producing clay models in the mid-19th century. Rakaldas Pal was considered one of the best artists in the miniature series, commanding a high sale price. These figures attributed to Rakaldas Pal are rare surviving examples of his superior craftsmanship, illustrating everyday tradespeople. Typically, the curator has the final say in the selection of artifacts for display. However, when an artifact selected is in very poor condition, our conservators advise on whether conservation can make them stable enough to exhibit. This set consisted of 20 figurines. Together, we decided on the 8 figurines that were stable enough for display. The conservators took selected figurines to the Singapore General Hospital for X-rays to uncover the extent of damage hidden beneath the textiles and within the clay structure. Cracks and fractures were noticed in certain areas, mainly at the joints of the ankles, arms and necks. Some possible reasons for this could be the clay not having been formed properly and drying too fast at the point of manufacture, corrosion of the metal armature, or an absence of armature at the abdomen. The significance of dress in life cycle rituals was also marked in the diaspora. The purchase or commissioning of the bridal sari was essential in wedding preparations, as seen widely among pan-Indian communities. P. Govindasamy Pillai, popularly known as PGP, was an illustrious Tamil entrepreneur who established the PGP chain of stores, including textile shops, flour and spice mills in Singapore. This Benares brocade sari was hand-picked and purchased in Benares by PGP for the wedding of Shanta, his granddaughter. It was a special occasion that warranted such personal attention. She was marrying her maternal uncle, PGP Ramakrishnan, who was also PGP's son. Early Indian migrants had diverse religious affiliations, reflecting the varied socio-cultural milieu in their hometowns. Hinduism, for instance, has various manifestations in Singapore, both in its urban forms and in its myriad folk expressions. An example of the former would be the special status enjoyed by Murugan in the Tamil diaspora, as seen during the widely celebrated annual festival of Thaipusam. The worship of Murugan has been profound also because he was adopted as patron deity by communities such as the Natukottai Chettiars. Murugan, worshipped in the austere form of Dandayudapani, as seen in this painting, is the caste deity of the Chettiars. For the Chettiars, devotion to Murugan extended to the social, cultural and business aspects of life. As patron god, Murugan is witness to all business transactions and temple matters. Every initial transaction is made in the name of Murugan with a token amount recorded in the account books as expenses incurred by the deity. A portion of their income is also retained as an endowment to Murugan and used later by the temple for charitable purposes. As they settled, the Chettiar diaspora constructed Murugan temples in Yangon, Medan, Saigon, Penang, Ipoh, Klang and Singapore. Observance of the festival of Thaipusam is also closely linked with the Chettiar communities in addition to its widespread popularity in the Tamil diaspora. In exceptional cases, the festival is also observed by members of the wider Indian community and even Chinese devotees. Large-scale migration to the Malay Peninsula in the 19th and 20th centuries consisted of controlled and voluntary movement of labour and professional migrants to specific destinations. Penang, Port Swettenham, Singapore and later Port Klang were the points of arrival. During the 20th century, ocean liners such as the SS Teesta, SS Rajula, State of Madras, SS Jalagopal and later MV Chidambaram plied from Indian ports of Madras, Nagapattinam and Calcutta to the Straits settlements up to the 1980s, carrying sojourners, migrants and even goods. Upon reaching Singapore, new immigrants entered the quarantine station at St. John's Island, where they were subjected to health checks to confirm that they were disease-free and to recover from the hardships of the sea voyage. The SS Rajula was one of the most popular steamships for travel from Madras or Nagapattinam to the Straits settlements including Penang and Singapore. From 1946, this ship could house 37 first class, 135 second class, 426 deck passengers and 1,300 unberthed deck passengers. In addition, 8,899 cubic meters of space was also available for cargo shipments. Owned by the British India Steam Navigation Company Limited, SS Rajula was sold in 1973 to the Shipping Corporation of India Limited and renamed Rangat. Several first and second generation migrants among Singapore's Indian community recall travelling by the Rajula to Singapore.